your name on it. Okay, you had that? But yeah. See? Very good.
Yeah, no, he said, what about me? No sugar today. Sugar.
Oh, no, no, nasty.
Today, I'm here. You can be anywhere you want to be. You choose where you want to be. Sure. That's who, your pastor was, there's always food. Right. It's not much unnecessary. But,
Talking out and then.
circumstances said, there's income, but so that is so that it is learning what I put down. And then there is borrowing, so we're done, instead of 7:10, we're done at roughly April 9. But there's food.
This is my first.
There's food. You can't have, right, there's no sandwich, there's no broccoli, no cheese, fluffy, egg salad, usually there used to be fruit, but there's no fruit.
Did you say for thank you for this nothing new? What was it?
I don't know if it's from Kiddush or separate, but it was, they had chocolate, fruits, and yogurt, which is for the discussion. Trial finished? Jury reached? Jury came back and not. That's because you're such an outstanding judge. You can speed things along and make things go quickly. You made the minion, Joey.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where are you? Everywhere. Just grab a spot. Where do you be? Oh, good. Wherever you are. Just need to know that I got a spot. I got my books. And I always do.
Do you hope that came through? Good. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom, those joining on Zoom. On live stream, we're going to start Mincha. Give you the page number in the Lev Shalem.
214.
Page 214, the Lev Shalem. If you have the Slim Shalom for Shabbat at home, it's 226, and the Sim Shalom 558. Thank you, Joey. Ashrei Ashrei Veitecha, Ojelu Chasela, Hashem Shekachalo, Hashem Shonai Elohav, Tilal Yirmim Kol, Tilat Adonai daber pi, v'rakol basar shen kodsho le'olam va'eh, v'anachnu nevarechya, v'yatav olam, hallelujah, u'bal tzion goel, l'shaveh fesh v'yakov niyum Adonai, v'nizor pitiotam, amar Adonai ruch yashrelecha, v'ata kadosh yoshev tilo Yisrael, v'kar zev zev yamar, kadosh, 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 v'nais mochel ha'aretz kadosh. Batisa any ruach va'ashmacharai kol rash kadol baruch v'Adonai mimkomo Adonai hilo le'olam bo'eh l'makadeh. Lamanya zamercha chavavaloy dam. V'yivtechu b'chaydei shemecha ki lo azavta dorshech Adonai Adonai chavetz l'man tzidko yadil Torah v'yahadir yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'yaman yirach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chaychon v'yomeichon v'chaydecho beit Yisrael b'galav v'zman kariv v'imru amei yehei shemer b'amvorach le'olam le'amaya yivarach v'yishtabach v'yitparchman v'yitnasei v'tadav v'yelev v'tolal shmei negurusha b'richu v'lam yigor b'chata v'shirata t'rucha v'nechmata damiran be'alma v'yimeru hameh v'ani tefilati l'chadnai ratzon l'himur b'chastecha haneini b'emet yishecha. Everyone just open the ark. On the right. Vayiven Aaron, Vayomer Moshe, Kumara Futu Avecha v'Nusu Misanecha Mipanecha, Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, Udvar Adonai Yerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah L'Yisrael L'Moshe V'Kedushato. Gadlu Adonai iti, Rashemo Yachta, L'Chadu L'Agvar V'Brach. Look at Shabbos, Mincha, my goodness. Chazak.
They knew you were reading the book.
Just why do you have to bring more food, Rabbi?
Bring back the fruit.
This is a thing for weeks while you were gone, so.
Bring back the fruit? What does that mean?
Whatever, we'll talk later.
Oh my goodness.
I ended up making the mini when I got here.
Wow. It's like a Taylor Swift concert. Okay.
Shake it off.
Does anybody have your site or need an aliyah this week? Or Elise? Okay, she'll give you an aliyah. Anyone else? Anyone else need an aliyah?
Re'eh is on page 1061 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. For those on Zoom following along at home for a different Chumash or Tanakh, it's Devarim 11:26. $1,061.
Move that mic closer to her.
There you
Shema Yisrael over there. Thank you.
Fatiga levet tera emachut Torah lenu bizman karov yachon pleitatenu pleitatem beis olachem lechasrach min ratzon v'namar amen. Hakol havu goyelo hinenu chavod la Torah tahamod. Deborah, we take the first aliyah. Talmud.
Dvorah bat David Belinda.
Dvorah bat David Belinda le'arishana baruch shenatan Torah le'moshe b'gushato v'atem madbikim alechem chayim kolchem hayom.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vahed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Re Anochi noten lifneichem hayom beracha uklala et haberacha asher tishmeu el mitzvot Adonai Eloheichem asher Anochi מצווה אתכם היום להקללה אם לא תשמעו אל מצוות אדוני אלוהיכם וסרתם מן הדרך אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום ללכת אחרי אלוהים אחרים אשר לא ידעתם והיה כי יביאך אדוני אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר אתם בשמה לרשתה ונתת את הברכה על הר גריזים ואת הקללה על הר עיבל אלוהימה בעבר הירדן אחרי דרך מבוא השמש בארץ הכנעני היושב בערבה מול הגלגל אצל אלוני מורה כי אתם עוברים את הירדן לבוא לרשת את הארץ
אשר אדוני אלוהיכם נותן לכם, וירשתם אותה וישבתם בה.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
Yamod Shalom Simcha ben Abraham li'ashniya.
Page 1062, verse 32.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach.
ברוך אדוני לעולם ועד.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
אמן. ושמרתם לעשות את כל החוקים ואת המשפטים אשר אנוכי נותן לפניכם היום. אלה החוקים והמשפטים אשר תשמרון לעשות בארץ אשר נתן אדוני אלוהי אבותיך לך לרשתה כל הימים אשר אתם חיים על האדמה, הבטבדון את כל המקומות אשר עבדו שם הגויים אשר אתם יורשים אותם את אלוהיהם על ההרים הרמים ועל הגבעות בתחת כל עץ הרענן. וניצצתם את מזבחותם ושיברתם את מצבותם ואשריהם תשרפון באש ובסילי אלוהיהם תגדעון ואיבדתם את שמם מן המקום ההוא. לא תעשון כן לאדוני אלוהיכם כי אם אל המקום אשר יבחר אדוני אלוהיכם מכל שבטיכם לשון את שמו שם לשכנו תדרשו ובתשמה.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chaye olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Malka bat Moshe v'Masi li'ashlishit.
Page 1063, chapter 12, verse 6, last line.
Shum is here.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. והבאתם שמה עולותיכם וזבחיכם ואת מסרותיכם ואת תרומת ידכם ונדריכם ונדרותיכם ובכורות בקרכם וצונכם, ואכלתם שם לפני אדוני אלוהיכם, ושמחתם בכל משלח ידכם, אתם ובתיכם, אשר ברכך אדוני אלוהיך, לא תעשון ככל אשר אנחנו עושים פה היום, איש כל הישר בעיניו, כי לא באתם עדת אל המנוחה ואל הנחלה, אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך, ועברתם את הירדן, וישבתם בארץ, אשר אדוני אלוהיכם מנחיל אתכם, והניע לכם מכל אויביכם מסביב, וישבתם בטח.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natav betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yam Yom Magbiya v'Hagolele. Please rise. The Torah is lifted and wrapped. Let's get a chair for Brant.
Torah, Asher Moshe, Livnei Bnei Yisrael, Al Pi Adonai, Beyad Moshe.
Eitz Chaim Lamachazikim Ba Betomchei Amerusha. Eitz Chaim Lamachazikim Ba Betomchei Amerusha. Derachecha derechei Noam, Bechol netivotei Shalom. Bechol netivotei Shalom. Yain ai anai 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 We'll pause for Amalei Rachamim. Marlies, do you want to come forward? Does any- What's that? Okay. Hold it. Okay. Got it. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
This is for your
For my mother,
Hebrew name, Masi.
Masi bat Meir Vamalka.
Amalei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim. Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Ashchina. B'malot Kedoshim U'Tohorim, Kezohar Harakim Asirim. Lanishmat Masi bat Meir V'Malka Shahalchu Liolama. Began Eden Tehei Menuchata. Ana Habala Rachamim. Hastireya beseter knafecha liolamim. Utzror b'tzrachim et nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava, v'nomar amen. Is there a memory of your mother you want to share with us?
Just that she's a very kind person, very caring. A lot of people, would turn to her for comfort and for counsel, and miss her a lot.
Yizichra Baruch, may her memory be a great blessing to you, Marlies.
Thank you.
Is there anyone present or on Zoom as a Yort site upcoming this week? Okay. Continue with the service. We're on page 221 on the left shalem. Ya'alu Hashem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodot v'shamayim v'yaron keren li'amo, talachu chasida l'vnei Yisrael kravo, hallelujah l'David, mizmor l'Adonai Orthodox, Egav Yehoshua, Kilo, Ya'alu v'harim It's Chaim Hila Machazikim Ba, Batemchem Yoshar Drached Darchei Noam V'chol Nativot Shalom, Hashivenu Anelach V'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, Yitkadal V'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, V'mad Yivrach Yutei V'yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon V'yomechon, V'chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael, B'glav V'zman Kariv Yimru Ameh, Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mavorach, V'elam Me'amayah, Yibarach v'yishtabach v'yitparchman v'yitnaseh v'tadav v'tlev v'talal shmena kedusha brichu v'elam v'kol berchata v'shirata tush berchata v'nechamata v'amiran me'alma v'yimeru amen. The Amidah is said in a quiet whisper beginning 223 in the Lev Shalem. Repetition Amidah begins 223. Please remain standing through the Kedusha and 225. Renai Svatai Tiftach Fi Agi Tilatecha. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu v'lo Eloheinu lo Abraham lo Yitzchak lo Yaakov Yala Gdol Gibor v'Yana Ral Yon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Yikonei Kol v'Zocher Chasei Avot Umevi Goel Evnei Bnei Hen L'man Shmo V'Yaba Melech Ozer Moshe Magen Baruch ata Adonai Magen Abraham Tagibor Le'lam Adonai Mechem Yitim Atarav Lo Yoshia Morid Hatal Mechakel Chaim Mechesed Mechem Yitim Rachamim Rabim Somech Neflim Rofech Olim Atir Asurim Mekayem Emunatol Yishnei Afar Michamocha Balgavrot Midam Malach Malach Meimitum Chaye Matzmiach Yeshua Ben Amanu Talach Hayot Meitim Baruch Ata Adonai Mechaye HaMeitim Veshim Chabalam Kishen Shemat Rishim Oto Bishmei Maron Kaktuv Yadim Yecha Vekarazeh Elzeh Yemach Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvot Melech Haaretz Kibadoli Matam Baruch Yameru Baruch Adonai Ben Kamod Rei Kochacha Katuv Lemor Im lo Adonai leolam lo hayet Zion ledor vador haliyah ledor vador nagid godlecha ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nadish v'shivchacha Elohein v'pinu le'emush leolam va'ed ki hamelach kadosh v'kadosh ata baruch ata Adonai ha'el kadosh ata echad b'shimcha echad mi keyamcha Yisrael ומי כעמך ישראל, גוי אחד בארץ, תפארת גדולה, ועטרת ישועה. יום מנוחה וקדושה לעמך נתת, יום מנוחה וקדושה לעמך נתת. אברהם יגל, יצחק ירנן, Yaakov uvanav yanuchuvo, Yaakov uvanav yanuchuvo, menuchat ahava unedava, menuchat emet v'yemuna, menuchat shalom v'shava, v'hashked v'vetach, menuchat shalom v'shava, v'hashked v'vetach, menuchat shalema, shatarot zebah, yakiru vanecha v'edu ki milchahem menuchatam, Yamanuchata, Yaktishu Eshemecha, Eloheinu v'levateinu, Rotzev Nuchateinu, Kashenu mitzvotecha, V'tencha kenu v'torhatecha, Sabeinu mituvecha, V'samchenu v'shuatecha, V'zarhen limeinu lavdecha v'yemed, V'nechalenu Eloheinu, V'yavar v'tzon Shabbat kodecha, V'nuchu v'ach Yisrael Makadosh Eshemecha, Baruch Ata Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat, Rotzeh Adonai Eloheinu, V'mcha Yisrael v'vilatam, V'yeshev v'davodalev v'betecha, V'yishay Yisrael tfilotam v'vatik v'oratzon tilotzon David Yisramecha v'techazena eineinu v'shivchas yom berachamim Baruch Ata Adonai hamachazir shechinato letzion modim על ניסך שבכל יום ימנו אני פותח וטובתך שבכל עת ערב ופתאום הטוב כל כל הרחמך המרחם כלו תמך חסדך מעולם קיווינו לך ועל כולם יפרח ודרם שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד וכל אחים ידעו חסד ועלו את שמך באמת על ישועתנו ועזרתנו עשינו ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך לכן אל ההודות שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם כי אתה מלך אדון לכל השלום וטוב בעיניך לברך עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום top of 230 צדקתך צדק לעולם בתורתך אמת בצדקתך אלוהים עד מרום אשר עשית גדולות אלוהים מי כמוך צדקתך כהרי אל משפטך תהום רבה אדם ובהמה תושיע אדוני יקרא וקדש שמי רבה למד יברך טבע מלחמתי בך יכונה ומכון וחי לכל בישראל בגלל בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן יהי שמי רב ומבורך לעולם ולעלמיה וברך וישתבח ויתפאר תשועה וינשא ותודה ותהילה ותהילה השכינה קדושה בריחו למה יקום ברכתה ושורתה דברותה ונחמתה אדם ירם בימיו ואמרו אמן תקבל צורתנו ואתנו לכל ישראל קדם חני ושמיא ואמרו אמן יהי שלום רב מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום ורמה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל הדגל. לפני מלך וחי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא נשמעים משה תקרא. Hakin hakabel chadar Eloheinu li'omer hey Rabbi Dicher Shalach V'Tzakinu V'Nachmu Shalach. Kakatuba Torah Tech Adonai Melech Le'Olam Ba'eh V'Nemar V'Yad Adonai L'Melech Kol Aretz B'Yom Ahu Yi Adonai Echad U'Shemo Echad. Kadisha Tom Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal V'Yitgadash Shemei Rabbah V'Yalmad Yivrach Chirutei V'Yamlich Malchutei V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael Hagala v'zman kari v'imru Amen Yehi shmei Rabba Muvarach le'olam le'omer Maya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudusha brichu Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata Damiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi shlama rabba amin shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom ramav v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. We're going to pause to get some food for Sudash Lishit. Those of you who are on Zoom, you, of course, are welcome to get some food as well. We'll regather in about 10 minutes. And those of you who are on Zoom from home, guess what? You have access to fruit, and we do not. So you are very fortunate, apparently. But go get some food, and we'll regather in about 10 minutes. Eric, there's still room in Blair's car. You can bring your your red cancer cubes.
I'd go with you guys, but I have baseball tomorrow at 12:30 in Santa Clarita.
You'll be with us in spirit.
You just hot out there. You see this statement here?
There's one up there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll start in about 2 minutes, so fill up your bowls with congealed cholent slop, and we'll start. Gruel or cruel? And maybe C. Okay, Again, I'm happy that not happy, but it's nice to underestimate the number of people who are coming. So there's going to be some sharing of the sheets. Okay, does everybody have a sheet at least near them? Okay. Okay. A certain amount of self-loathing is healthy for the psyche, because self-loathing is a cousin to self-critique. And if you're not willing to do self-critique, then you're not going to really know yourself and be willing to change. And sometimes it dips into self-loathing. And I'm saying this somewhat wink. And what I mean by that in context is I live my modern, egalitarian, traditional, open-minded, progressive, conservative, Masorti Judaism with an enormous amount of joy and embrace and an enormous amount of wondering, is this the right path after all? Because, and it's not that I'm not going to do it. I don't imagine my making an enormous change from this, but there's something about the mixture of religion, which almost by definition is about the security of knowing you're doing something right rather than wrong, and an open-mindedness and curiosity about many different ways of doing things that can convince you, I think, properly to be a multiculturalist and to have a heterodoxy when it comes to ideas. It's not a coincidence, and it's okay to have a certain amount of envy about this. It's not a coincidence that our brand of Judaism, that we're all living hopefully with great pride, is just not as certain to produce great grandchildren who see the world as we do, as the more extreme representations of it. Now, that's not a reason to convert to being a Haredi, but to be blind to the phenomenon that trying to be committed to inherited tradition and not wishy-washy, that is that is not a fair way of saying it, but to be more malleable and to be open to other ideas, it's a tough proposition to sell, right? And it may be either the most beautiful expression of religious life or the most bizarre undoing of what religious life was meant to be. Or, as is almost often the case when I do teaching, a combination of the two. That's my intro into a little look into Parshat Re'eh today. And hopefully those on Zoom, the text sheet went out in the Shabbat email. The first text on the sheet is simply the first verse from the Parsha that Rosemary read a few weeks ago. Re'eh, see, God is speaking to the Jewish people through Moshe in the first person singular. It's not Re'u, it's Re'eh, as if God is speaking to a nation, the unity of the nation. Anochi, I. Anochi and Ani in some ways are synonyms, but Anochi is evocative of the Ten Commandments, because that's how Ten Commandments begin. So I, the very one who revealed myself to you on Har Sinai, Notein Lifnechem, I am placing, I'm giving before you, Hayom today, Bracha Uklala, right? A blessing and a curse. We know this verse, we quote this verse, it's a very familiar verse, it's a very stark verse, right? What's stark about it is that you have this way or that way. One of them is right and one of them is wrong. And it's either that one of them is right or wrong for you, like you will be blessed, you will be cursed, or maybe one of them is right with a capital R. It's actually the only way to go. And therefore, if you don't do that, you're going in the wrong direction. That is a foundational principle of religious life. We struggle with it sometimes, particularly when co-religionists say that we've chosen the wrong way, right? But that is a foundational principle of Jewish life and of religious life, right? Choose this way, not just because it's nice, it's not just because it's okay, it's not just because it's acceptable. It is right. And if you don't choose this way, it is wrong. Anytime a member of our own tradition chastises me individually or us as a community for how we practice Judaism, I both get my hackles up and I'm furious and I'm defensive. And I also try to pause and jump into that person's consciousness and realize that he or she really does think that what he or she is doing when it comes to Jewish expression is right. Not just kind of right, not just one of the rights, but right. And therefore, if we do it differently, we are wrong. We have chosen the cursed way. If you look at the second translation on Sefaria, there are like 9 or 10 different translations of the Torah. This one was recently added. We found it as we were in our Rashi class. I do not know who the gentleman is, Charles Kahana. I don't know if he's related to other famous Kahanas, but he wrote a commentary, mostly a translation of the Torah now almost 60 years ago. And he takes some license as he translates, and some of the license as he translates is actually interesting. He writes it this way, said Moses, Mark, that's the Re'eh instead of C, I set before you today a blessing and its reverse. It's interesting how he changes curse into reverse. Charles Kahana did not know what the word klala meant. This is not, he was confused by the word. He knows that klala means reverse. And it also may just be a coincidence they chose a word that rhymes with curse. But what would you say, and I don't know if we have other microphones on the table here, so I'll have to repeat for people on Zoom. What would you say is the impact of choosing to translate bracha and klala not as blessing and curse, but blessing and its reverse? How does that change the meaning of it, Brant?
Constant struggle. And nobody is always in the blessing category. Even your Hasidic friends make mistakes or get hedge on their belief, or they don't practice it perfectly. It's a known fact. I mean, nobody can do everything right. So part of it is nobody is perfect, and when you don't do something, it's not an absolute. It's recognition of human character that it reverses you somewhat. It doesn't permanently punish you.
Great. So what Brand is offering is that perhaps by translating it as blessing and as reverse, it softens the binary a bit. It softens the dichotomy. You've got blessing over here, and sometimes we go in the wrong direction a bit. But once you put the car in reverse, but you can eventually put it into drive again. Interesting. I have no idea that's what Kahana meant by translating that way, but it's an interesting way of reading it. Anyone else? The difference between hearing it translated as blessing and curse versus blessing and its reverse. Deborah?
Seems like it might make it a little more complicated because it seems like he's almost saying it's not that obvious, right and wrong. You could take a blessing and turn it into a curse. You could reverse it.
Good. So what Deborah's saying is that maybe by translating it this way, again, similar to Brandt, he's trying to complicate things a bit, as if it's not just an obvious right or wrong, but that sometimes that which you do in the name of or in the direction of blessing can reverse on itself and it can undermine you. Okay? Interesting possibilities. Eric?
I don't know if it's what he meant, but to me it's evocative of, two sides of the coin. That maybe something that you think is a blessing isn't exactly a blessing, and maybe something that you think is a curse isn't. Like there's character traits that really, especially in the extreme format, where you kind of take a good thing too far and it becomes a bad thing.
Right. Great. So maybe by translating and its reverse, it's almost making them closer to one another. So on this side is blessing. You flip it over and it's reverse, which means that if you flip it over again, you're back to blessing, as if it's all too easy to toggle in between them. Okay. So those are some comments on the translation. Now I want to look at a commentary. Rabbi Ovadia Sforno, a 15th or 16th century Italian commentator. Look what he says on this notion. So the dibur amatchil, the word that he is commenting on is the word re'eh. Look, this is what he says. Habita ure'eh. He adds just a synonym for look, like discern and look. The translation on the left is not my translation. It's a combination of whatever translation was on Safari and mine. So whoever translated here turned it into pay good attention instead of two different verbs. Look, investigate and look. Shelo ye inyancha, that your inyan. Inyan means a matter, but here it means like a way of living your life. This is so that the way you live, al ofen benoni, that you don't just stay in the middle. Don't be parav, be milchik or fleshik, or recognize. Well, I say you should be parav, but this is an anti-vegan, right? Recognize that there's milchiks and there's fleshiks, and one of them is right and one of them is wrong, right? Don't choose the middle path. And if you want a colorful way of understanding what Sforno said, ask Brant for him to speak to you offhand, because he had a nice quip to me. I don't know if it's public worthy. But this is so that you don't live your life in the center, right? Which is where a lot of us like to live our lives some of the time. Maybe the Sforno would say that's cowardice, or maybe the Sforno is wrong. I don't mind the Sforno being wrong, but that's how he's reading the verse. Kemo shehu minhag. After all, this is the minhag, the culture, b'sha'ar ha'umot, of the other nations. I don't really know what he means by that. I'm trying to imagine 15th, 16th century Italian commentator. What does he think about Christianity and Christendom? What does he think about the non-Jewish culture that suggests that they are constantly in the middle? Because I could imagine one could think the opposite, that they're living a life of an extreme devotion to a God, and understand that we rejected that God, and therefore they're willing to persecute us ad nauseum. But on some level, he believes that they are middle straddlers, and we, because of this commentary here, because of the verse, are supposed to only go one way and not the other. Ki omnam, and granted, I elided something. I mentioned Sforno as if he's speaking about his contemporary time, and we all are on some level. In context, he's actually explaining what God is saying to the Israelites, as if the Canaanites and the Jebusites and all the people around them were the ones who were keeping the middle path, whereas God wanted us to choose a specific path. Because after all, Sforno is saying, that God is saying to the Israelites, I'm placing before you an easy choice. Bracha ukala, a blessing and a curse. Behem shnei haktzavot, they are extremes. This goes back to what Eric was saying before, like that they're the farthest they can be from one another, and yet somehow they are closer than what you would imagine. Hi habracha, hi hatzlacha yoter min hamaspik. What is this blessing of which I speak? Think of hatzlacha, success, thriving. We all want to thrive and have success that's sufficient. He's saying that the bracha is success beyond what you need. Not necessarily material success, but not material success either, right? And whatever you imagine is down that path, down that Willy Wonka path, it's greater even than that. It's more than you could possibly need. That ayin sadi probably means al tzad, on the side of hayoter tov, the exceedingly, exceedingly good. This path will lead you not just to sufficiency, but excellence in every aspect of your life. V'haklala, and the curse, he me'era mechaseret. You might know the word lechaser means to reduce. A me'era is a synonym for a curse. It's a curse that reduces, a curse that constantly drains. How is it translated here? Constantly diminishes. Shalo yusag hamaspik, that no matter how much you toil and travail in that direction, you will never gain sufficiency. You'll always be lacking. So on this side, you'll never, no matter how much you lack, you'll never lack, because you'll have sufficiency ad infinitum. And on this side, no matter how much you work for it, you'll never have enough. Ushnehem lifnechem, and they're both in front of you. Why would you ever choose this way over that way? Lahasig, they're both in front of you to gain, kafi ma shetivcharu, based on what you choose. So the Sforno is making it very, very stark, right? I, God, am giving you a choice. You can choose it. There's no reason why you can't choose it. And I'm laying out the stakes of the choice. Why anyone would choose this over that, I have no idea. I'm sure you've confronted people within our religion and beyond our religion who are that certain. Why have you not accepted Christ? It's right in front of you. Just accepting the redemption is right there. How stupid can you be? Why would you not choose this path? Accept it, and you'll have the world to come, and you don't have to live in doubt anymore, right? And people who believe it. I know that's not tautology, but they when they say they believe it. And members of our own tradition, right, who are so certain about the way they see God and Torah and religious practice, I can imagine the sanctos. What are you doing? Why are you vacillating? It's so obvious, and look how rich this life. And after all, God said it was the case. And by the way, we have versions of that as well. You don't have to name names, but there are people who are living their lives, their Jewish lives and their non-Jewish lives, in such a way where we might say to ourselves and to others, how could they possibly believe that about Judaism, about Torah, about America, about Israel? It's so obvious. Like, choose this way, which is so clear. Why would you choose the cursed way? We could choose the blessed way. We all have aspects of our commitment to our ideas and principles that feel comfortable in a sforno mode. We don't like it. We bristle at it when people throw it at us. And we feel wonderful when we can throw it at others. Why would you ever believe that? You don't have to believe that. Believe this instead. You plead guilty. Yeah.
Just ask Santa. She hears me every time we go back.
You plead guilty to what in this regard? Uh-huh. Do you have any doubt about your certainty? Once in a while. That's the most Jewish answer possible. I love it, right? I plead guilt and certainty. Sometimes, I'm a little doubt about it. Sandra?
Now, I know there's a lot more for us to look here.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to, but I wonder if rather it being about certainty, it's about like a particular certainty that you force on others.
Yeah.
If it's about being certain and choosing your right way, it's more of a personal certainty, choosing good over evil, whatever that means to you.
Right.
I mean, and of course, it's within the context of this, what Hashem wants us
Right.
to think good and evil is.
So Sandra's wondering, I'm going to repeat for those on Zoom, is this about a personal certainty, in which case, why shouldn't you feel certain that you're choosing the right thing for you versus a certainty that you're imposing on other people? And of course, the rub is that we're certain that we know what is good and what is evil, and therefore we're certain that those who disagree with us are wrong, but they're also certain, right? I made that leap. Okay, so that's the Sforno. Let's go back a few generations to the Rambam, Maimonides, 12th century Spain, Morocco, Israel, Egypt, one of the great Jewish minds ever to have lived, and famous, in fact, infamous, for in some ways understanding the whole range of ideas totally differently than Sforno. He's not famous for conflicting with Sforno. He's famous in what we're about to read happens to conflict with what Sforno said before. And before we read this, I want to make something clear. Because conservative Jews love to claim Rambam, right? He would have supported us had he been alive in our day. He was an exceedingly frum Jew. Like he wrote the book, the original book of Jewish law, right? Upon which everything else was copied on some level. So he's talking here in this section, not necessarily about like wishy-washiness about your observance, but how you hold yourself in the world, which means he's going to make the claim that you can be incredibly focused on punctilious religious observance and not be a jerk about it in your life, and not walk around with a puffy certainty that ends up saying more about who you are than how you make your tea on Shabbat. Okay, this is the Mishnah Torah is his code of Jewish law. He begins his Mishnah Torah, which ends up being a fully comprehensive code of Jewish law, including regarding defunct rituals such as the temple, because he lived 1,000 years more after the temple stood. But he begins it with philosophy. It's not his primary philosophical work, but he begins it with philosophy. Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, the laws of the foundational principles of Torah, which talks about his cosmology, his understanding how the world came to be, and God is the prime mover, very influenced by Aristotelian philosophy. And then in the second section, the Hilchot Deot. It's translated here, this is not my translation, as the laws of human dispositions. Okay, a de'ah is a piece of knowledge, an idea. So it's almost like his little treatise on his ideas about ideas, and his ideas about how you hold ideas. And this is one of the famous places where Rambam lays out his philosophy of thinking and on being. De'ot harbe yesh l'chol echad be'echad mipnei adam. Every person has lots of deot. So how you translate deot will impact what you think he's saying. So it could be ideas, but it could be dispositions or character traits. It's hard to know. If you're in my Rashi class on Wednesdays, you know that the translation problem hovers perpetually. It's impossible to translate even a simple Hebrew word to a simple English word 800 years after it was written. We can guess, we can get close, we can't get there. And each person, each of these traits has representations of it that are extremes of one another. And he's going to give you examples. Yesh adam shehu bal chema. There's a person who is filled with butter. No, just kidding. Anger. He's a person of chema. He's a person of fury. The ko'es tamid is always angry. Yesh adam shedato miyushevet alav. And that's a person whose mind is always settled upon him or her. Ve'no ko'es, not angry. Klal, at all. B'im yichas, and if he happens to be angry, yichas ka'as ma'at. There'll be a tiny little burst of fury. B'chama shanim, once in every few years. A Sforno approach to this, by the way, would say what? Don't be angry. Choose the second path, right? There's a blessing and a curse. It's cursed to live your life representing fury. So since there's a way of doing it where people say, God, I don't remember the last time that guy was mad, choose that. You would think that would be what would be the appropriate way. Third paragraph. V'yesh adam shehu gva lev bioter. It's a person who is very high in his heart, which is a way of saying prideful. V'yesh shehu shefal ruach bioter. There's someone who's very, very humble. Again, you could imagine saying, don't be proud, be humble. V'yesh shehu bal ta'ava, lo tizba. There's a person who has appetites that cannot be satisfied. Lo tizba nafsho mehaloch hatava. No matter what this person does, he or she can never have his or her appetites sated. V'yeshahu ba'al lev tahor. There's a person who has a pure heart, which I think he understands to mean as just not needing much. And it's not necessarily kindness. We might say lev tahor as a person is kind. Here, I think he's saying like your heart is so full and pure, you don't really need much else to be okay. Veloita ve'afilu l'dvarim mi'atim. Has no desire even for the small things, shehaguf tzarich lahem, that a person might even need. Again, you have a couple examples where you can imagine someone saying, don't be angry, don't be prideful, don't be constantly driven by your appetites, be calm, be humble, and allow your appetites to like dissipate and focus on things that matter the most, right? You can imagine that someone would weigh in that's the way to approach it. That's not what the Rambam says. I skipped one halacha. This is now the third halacha. Shteik tzavot harachokot zo mizo. The two extremes of these traits are very, very far from one another. Shebechol deya v'deya einan derech tova. It is not the right way to choose either of these two extremes. Ve'ein ra'ui lo ladam. It is not appropriate for a person lalechat behem to go in that way. V'lo lelamdan latzmo, and not to teach himself. Don't delude yourself into thinking that if you've chosen the path that seems to be the opposite of the evil path, but you've taken that to an extreme, that there's anything good in that. That is a delusion. It's a delusion that to be the opposite of prideful is glorious, right? There is a sin in too much humility. There is a sin in not being willing to be angry at anything. There's a sin in not having desire, noticing what your body might need and might want. Go to the next page, it's top of page 3. If you are honest with yourself, I'm interpolating, and you notice yourself kind of tending towards one side, or more ready for one side, or you already became rather learned and practiced in one of them, and you're on the path, go back. Turn towards pride a little bit if you have been too humble. Turn towards a certain type of anger if you haven't gotten angry at anything in a long time. Yachzir atzo lemutav. Go back to the good, which is found opposite Sforno on some level in the center. Ve'elech b'derech hatovim. And that way you will go in the path of the good ones. V'haderech hayeshara. That is the straight path. Okay? This is he says this in many places. This is one of the famous places he says it. Next halacha, haderech hayeshara himida benonit. What's the right way to hold yourself? The middle path. It's sometimes translated translated, sometimes written by the Rambam as Haderech HaEmtza'i, the one in the center. Shebechol de'ah v'de'ah, because in all of these dispositions or ideas, mikol hadeyot sheyesh lo adam, in any way that a person could hold herself. Vehi hade'ah shehi rechuka mishtei k'tzavot. What's the right path? It's the place on the geometric map that is as equally far from each of the extremes. Right? Simple geometry, the center point on a line of 2 points. Richuk shaveh, at equal distance from the extreme. Ve'ena krova lo lazo v'lo lazo. Don't feel like if you're closer to the utter absence of pride, you're better than the person who doesn't realize how prideful she is. It's actually being in the center, being equally far away from pridelessness is what you should, how you should hold yourself, equally far away from pridelessness as you are from abundant pride. Now, what do you, I mean, first of all, you may have come across this either in actual text or people referencing it. What do you make of what Rambam is saying here? How does it speak to you?
I think it's interesting that he used exactly the same word as Sforno, Benoni. And he obviously knew Sforno.
Reverse, because Sforno comes after, Sforno knew Rambam.
Yeah.
Sforno is 15th, 16th century, Rambam is 11th, 12th century.
Oh, okay.
But so you can make the opposite argument.
Right. One of them is knowingly refuting the other by
Right.
using that precise word.
Right, so the word Benoni, either it's just a word or it's an intentionally used word to refute a previous position, right? And one of them, that's why you can imagine why Masorti considered Jews like to claim the Rambam. We are the Benoni. We're the road. We're neither too frum nor too anti-frum. We're neither too religious nor too anti-religious. Neither too committed nor under-committed. Rambam is us. It's very convenient that we claim that. We claim Rambam. We claim all the good ones, right? And Sforno is saying, that God is saying, avoid the Benoni. Avoid just the path that it seems to be so careful. I'm not here, 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 where am I? Right? In the 80s and 90s, it was, like every decade or so, the language that we speak about the Jewish community changes. I remember the big conversations in USY and Ramah in the 1980s or 90s is that it was important for a conservative Jew to define herself not in negatives. Right? Don't say that you're neither Reformed nor Orthodox, because then you're nothing, right? How do you define yourself in what you are, not what you're not? You can't define yourself by what you're not, right? And Sforno might be saying, yeah, because if you're just avoiding extremes, then you haven't actually chosen the blessing that's been for you. The Rambam might say, the very purpose of establishing who you are and where you are is identifying the extremes and saying, I'm equally far from both of it, right? Now, yes, Marlies.
Is Rambam referring to that blessing and curse style?
He's not giving a direct commentary on that verse, unlike Sforno, right? So I'm sort of comparing things that are not directly speaking to another. Sforno is giving a commentary on a verse of Torah. Rambam obviously knows Torah, but he's writing this not in a commentary form. He's writing it in his treatise about ideas. Yeah, Deborah.
He sounds more like he's being a therapist here about not, because I'm sure Rambam wouldn't say, oh, be sort of wishy-washy in your observance of its vote.
Right.
But he sounds like he's talking more about the tone with which you pursue that.
Maybe, right. Maybe it's about tone and demeanor more than what you aver to be the proper religious path. But we can't interview him, so we don't know, but it's a possibility. One more comment, and then we'll look at the last text. Rosemary?
I was thinking that God knowing us how we are, He has given our Uklala, whereas Rambam is going in the middle. And if God was going to stay in the middle, then we would find between in the middle and this one, Barakah. So
Yes.
He has given us this much, then He takes us in the middle. So you're safe that way. Because we can't be 100% either.
So the Rambam famously never wrote a linear commentary on the Torah. He did so much, but he didn't do what Rashi did and what Sforno did, which was to say, this is what this verse means, this is what this verse means, this is what this verse means. I'd like to fantasize that had he written a commentary on the Torah, when he got to Parshat Re'eh, he would have said, what does bracha v'klala mean? Klala, well, bracha means staying in the center, right? It's that is the blessed place away from the curses on both sides, right? But not everyone agrees with Rambam, right? There might be people in the room who say, but there's a certain, there are places in life where to stay in the center and to not take stands is in itself an approval of things that should not be approved, should not get our approval, right? And that there's evil there. And I want to end with this wonderful piece by Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, the great 20th century, 21st century Talmudist, most famously known for translating first the Aramaic Torah from a dense Talmud into a very digestible Hebrew, and then doing nearly the entire Talmud also in English. A tremendous contribution to Jewish life and thinking. I'll read just because I want to make sure that people on the Zoom can hear. The golden mean, which is the middle way in between extremes, the medium between the different contradictions, is the basis of Maimonides' ethical theory. Maimonides speaks of avoiding extremism and choosing the moderate way in between extremes as the apex of Jewish and human elevation. And by the way, to you, Deborah, so I think Steinsaltz is saying that it's not just about demeanor, it's actually the middle point between ideas, right? Like extremism of ideas, not just demeanor. Whether Steinsaltz is right about that read or not, I'm not sure. But Steinsaltz is not a nobody. According to him, any tendency towards the extreme, even if that extreme is usually considered good, is tantamount to casting off the yoke and is a saddening deviation, whereas the medium way is the good and true way. On the other hand, and in striking contradiction to this, stands Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotzker's approach to almost the same issue. By the way, the Kotzker Rebbe in the town of Poland was known, for better or for worse, as a fiery person. Not someone that was a lot of fun to spend a long time with. A recluse, brilliant in his religious mind, but someone who would give rebuke without hesitation, and was fierily committed to his ideas. And one of Heschel's most wonderful books is comparing the philosophy and the demeanor of the Kotzker Rebbe with the Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of Chassidut, whose Hasidic revolution the Kotzker Rebbe thought he was perpetuating, and actually was perpetuating, and the Baal Shem Tov was more of a Maimonidean in that his demeanor and his understanding of teaching Torah was calm and love and embrace and lack of judgment. And Kotzker Rebbe's Chassidut was a version of how dare you, right? Both of them very, very committed Jews, different ways of wielding that Torah. When this rabbi was once asked why he is so extreme in his views and conduct, he took the person who asked that to his window, which opened to the street, and explained, you see, the two sides of the road are for human beings. Only horses walk in the middle. That is a cousin to the line that you said to me before, Brand. The Kotzker Rebbe thus defined the middle way, the average between the extremes, which is what Maimonides said is the ultimate way, as the horse's path, the way animals walk. Men, women, must choose one extreme or the other, or else they are but horses. That's compelling too, right? Irv, you're like, you become a Kotzker Rebbe fan, right? So the Kotzker says that's part of thinking, Maimonides. That's weak thinking. That's a lack of courage. And Maimonides might say back to the Kotzker as they spoke over hundreds of years, the way you're living is unsustainable. And there are going to be fewer and fewer people who are willing to spend time with you. And you're not even going to realize the extent to which you become a caricature of your own extremism. And as you castigate the extremists on the other side, you're going to paint yourself as a virtuous one, but you may have dipped into anti-virtue as well. And Steinsaltz tries to synthesize this, and which is why I thought it was an interesting way of resolving the bracha and klala. But if we re-examine more deeply these two seemingly contradictory approaches, we shall see that the contradiction between them is in fact imaginary, for they do not deal with one and the same issue. Maybe, Deborah, you were saying something similar to this. There are in fact two paths, both of which go in the middle between extremities. But the golden mean, Maimonides, and the horse's path, as Kotzker says it, are not at all identical. The horse's path is the horse-like average between extremes, and is the necessary result of lack of power and courage to take one of the extreme ways. People who cannot muster energies and devote themselves totally to anything, always walk in the middle. wanting to please everyone, pleasing no one. Being always haunted by various motivations in every way, they make silly compromises between things. They measure the middle path with the standards of their smallness and try to walk there, but in truth it is the path of horses. That's his defending the Kutzker's way of thinking. The golden mean, Maimonides on the other hand, is not just the average between extremes. In fact, the golden mean is the merging of extremes. It is made for people who are full of true passion and great enthusiasm, people who can take both extremes together, and who therefore constitute in their soul the inner merging of both extremes, the golden mean. I thought this was significant to talk about as Jews. This does not need to be my therapy session, but I think about this all the time as a rabbi, and a rabbi of a wonderfully heterogeneous mixed community of Jews, and mixed community of Americans, and mixed community of Zionists, and Jews and Americans and Zionists who are convinced in many ways because of our polarized society that they're right and the other side is wrong, and that might even be true. Not just a little bit wrong, but ultimately wrong. And I think about almost every day, what is the rabbi's role in this, right? And what does it mean to live a Maimonidean way of trying to stay in between the extremes, but not in such a way that becomes the Kutzker's understanding the middle path, which is just avoiding the hard decisions and the hard judgments about what's happening in our world. When anyone might be furious at me for refusing to take a stance on something that they would very much want me to take a stance on, which ineluctably would then infuriate many, many people on the other side of the very thing. I'd like to think that maybe I could be seen as trying to do it the Maimonidean way and not the Kutzker Rebbe's way, and I don't always do it perfectly. But this is something that has been in front of the Jewish people since we were given the opportunity to choose blessing or curse. And every one of us is involved in that process all the time. And I think we should be sensitive and generous to one another as we're walking those pathways. Shabbat Shalom. Okay, we'll do Kaddish Rabbanan and then do Mariv and Shabbat. We should bench first. Why do I always forget that? Maybe because I don't eat. Do you want to lead us, Joey? Okay. Okay, go ahead, Joey. I'll get you the microphone.
Shonenu Rina Az Yomiru Vagoyim Higdil Adonai La Soti Mele Higdil Adonai La Soti Manu Hainu Semechim Shuv Adonai Et Shivitenu Ka'afikim Ba'negev Hazorim Bedima Berina Yiktoru Halach Elechu Vacho No say Meshech Hazara Bo Yabo Berina No say Alumotav Chave Ryan Varech Yehi Shemaran Varach Metavi Adalam Bir Shoot Chave Ryan Rechel Hinu Shechal Nimi Shalom Baruch Eloheinu shechalnu mishalov tuvo chayinu Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Hazan et Haolam Kulo Betuvo Bechein Bechesed Uvrachamim Hu Notein Lechem Lechol Basar Ki Lilam Chasto Uvtuvo Hagadol Tamid l'chasar lanu ve'ayachsar lanu ma'azon lilam va'ed bavur shemo hagadol kiwel zanum farnes la'kol umetiv la'kol umechin ma'azon l'chol beriotav asher bara baruch atah Adonai hazan et ha'kol nodel Adonai.
Okay, we'll move to Kaddish Rabbanan, page 38 in the Lev Shalem. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'alma, Divrach, Chirutei, V'amlich, Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayei, Dechol Beit Yisrael, V'agala, V'zman Kari, V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah, Mubarach, Le'olam, Le'amei Olamaya. Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shmei Dekudashah, B'richu, Leila min kol berchata v'shirata, tishbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Al Yisrael, v'al Rabbanan, v'al Tamidehon, v'al kol Tamidei Tamidehon, v'al kol man da'askin be'oraita, di v'atra hadain, di b'chol atar v'atar. Yehei lahon ulchon shlama rabba, china v'chista v'rachamin, v'chayin arichin, umzona revicha, uforkana min kodam avohon divishmaya, v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim tovim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom u'romav, u'barachamav yaseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, Imru Amen. Mariv for weekday. What is it? 264 in the Lev Shalem. 200 in the Sim Shalom. 137 Slim Shalom.
Or 281 the Shabbat Pesach Slim Shalom.
והוא מכפר ון וישחית והרבה לשיבה פועלו כחמתו אדוני שם מלך יעננו ויום קוראנו ברכו את אדוני המבורך ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד ברוך את אדוני ומעביר יום ומביא לילה מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד לכוננו עולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המאביב האביב אהבת עולם בישראל עמך אהבת אדוני ואהבתך תשא ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Ein Alechem Emet. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם, משה ונשא לכנו שירה, בשמחה רבה ואמרו להם. מי כמוך בעלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ובניך בוקרם לפני משה, זה אלי אנו ואמרו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר כי פתרנת יעקב וגלום יד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. השכיבנו ונעלנו שלומנו כי נכנסנו שעת שלומך. ושמור צאתנו וראינו לכם לשלום אתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני שומר ישראל לעד. ברוך נא לעולם אמן ואמן. כי המלכות שלך חילמי תמלוך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד מלך עלינו עולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו. יתגדל ויגדל שמו רבה, ועמד דברי קירותי והמליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון וחייכו בישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב עמו אמן. יש מברך לעולם ולעמל מיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמר קדושה וכולי. אלא מן כה ברכתה ושירתה, תושבתה ונחמתה דמן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יתגדע ויקדש ורבה, בעמד דבר קיוטה ונכבחותה בחייכון ובימיכון וחייתכו בישראל, בעלה בזמן קריב עמו, אמן. יש ברבה ברך לעולם ומיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתמר ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמר קדושה, והוא לאלה מן כה ברכתה ושירתה, תושבע ונחמתה דמון בעלמה ועמו, אמן. Vayino Baradam, Masaydenu Kanalenu, Masaydenu Kananehu, Yeshua. Ikra eni venu imo anochi v'tzara achaltechu v'abdichen orchin raspio v'bishuati orchin raspiehu v'reu bishuati. Ve'ata kadosh shivti ol Yisrael v'kara ze el ze ve'amahar Kadosh, 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 Anatzo melech haaretz kevodo. V'tisa eni ruach v'shma chara karash gadol, V'od Adonai mimgomo. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Titen emet Yaakov chesed l'Avraham, asher nishbat al v'denu mekedem. ויבטחו בחיירי שמך כי לא עזבת דרשך אדוני, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר. יתגדע ויגדש ורבה, בעמד דבר קיוטה ומלך מלכותה בחייכון ובימיכון וחייתכו בישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב עמו, אמן. יהי רבה ברך לעולם ומיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתמר ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמר קדושה, והוא לאלה מן כה ברכתה ושירתה, תושבע ונחמתה דמון בעלמה ועמו, אמן. תתקבץ צלותו וברכו לכל ישראל, קדם ונשמע ועמו, אמן. יהי שלום רב מן שמעיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועמו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועמו, אמן. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ועמו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה ברכו. לאלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו, אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'momav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Shkoach Alan, someone wants to get the lights. I know. Try it with garlic. But Rosemary is the Torah reader. Joking aside, with the fruit, was there sufficient food? Yes. People like we ran out of things. What did we run out of? Okay, so it needs to be a little more of everything. Okay.
But you made it sound so appetizing when you call it congealed, Rabbi.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to reduce people from taking it so there'd be more left for me during the week.
Ah, got it.
Well, we're thrilled to add more. I think the reaction for a long time we were throwing out so much food, right? So it's hard to know. We're trying to do the derech habenoni, the middle road, and not tend to the extreme of excess or lack.
Rabbi, I come for the food.
Hine el Yeshuati, Eftach velo Efchad, Ki aziv ezimrad ya, Adonai vayehi li l'Yeshua, Ushaftamayim b'sason, Mimayne ha-Yeshua, L'Adonai ha-Yeshua, Alamcha birchatecha sela, Adonai tzvaot, imanu, miskav lanu, Elohei Yaakov sela, Adonai tzvaot, Ashrei Adam botei bach, Adonai Yoshia, Hamelech Yaneinu ve'Yam Koreinu la Yehudim hayta ora ve'simcha ve'sason ve'yekar kein tiyeh lanu kos Yeshuot esa u'b'shem Adonai ekra Ainanai Adonai Ainanai Adonai Baruch atah Adonai Mochalam Borei Pragafen Baruch atah Adonai Mochalam Borei Minei Besamim Baruch atah Adonai Mochalam Borei Miorei Ha'esh Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Mochalam Abdil Ben Kol Shechol Beino L'Choshech Ben Yisrael Amim Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheishi Me'amaseh Baruch atah Adonai Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol Hamavdil Ben Kodesh L'Chol Chatoteinu Yimcho Zareinu B'chaspeinu Yarbe Yarbe Kacho B'kaha Kochavim Bala Zareinu B'chaspeinu Yarbe B'kacho B'kaha Kochavim Bala. So if you order more food, you better all come. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Shavua Tov, everyone. A good week, healthy week. See you soon. Shavua Tov. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, you're right. Where are they? They're being, Joey's doing it.
Well, we have to find a middle road with that, Rabbi.
It's probably Daniel's perspective, but he actually
just white grapes. Deep acid.
Me tastes kind of like apple juice.
I'd rather have grapes. Grapes.
Yeah, I agree. It resembles the color and it tastes to me. Oh wow.
It has grape juice type. It's like a sort of like hybrid. Doesn't taste like apple juice to me. Doesn't taste like grape juice to me.
Wow.
It tastes like juice.
Okay.
But yeah, I can't identify this. If you give me this juice, it would not be with sight unseen as well. I would not be able to say what is it. This is scary. But okay, it's grape juice, so it's okay.
Well, yeah, she's here, and yeah, this is just, I was telling her. I enjoyed it all, you know. Yeah, she did. Yeah, she forced it on me. That's great.
Okay, no, I'm David.
Paul. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Where do we?
Yeah, this actually brings it. Okay, so I'm writing that.
Daphna's in Israel this week.
Yeah, maybe. No, well,
He gave it to me like 3 months ago. I still have it in the water. It's still good. It was like memory lane. It was more.
do you, so you live here now?
It's not existent.